Welcome to the inaugural SELLYs Award celebration, the Social and Emotional Learning Leaders of the Year, hosted by CASEL. I'm David Adams, Chief Executive Officer at the Urban Assembly and CASEL board member. Now here at CASEL, we believe that the great moments are built on collaboration with others to produce the richest insights, the biggest impacts, and the best outcomes in support of children. To recognize outstanding achievements and to encourage high standards in the field of social and emotional learning, CASEL presents awards annually in research, practice, and public policy. This week, we are celebrating our 2021 recipients. And today, I am honored to chat with one of those recipients of the Mary Utne O'Brien Awards for Excellence in Expanding Social and Emotional Evidence-Based Practice, Keeth Matheny, known to many as Coach Rudy. This award was established in 2011 to honor the memory and the dedication of Mary Utne, former CASEL Executive Director and key leader in the field of social and emotional learning. Keith, I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about your work in social and emotional learning.
Well, thanks, David. Obviously, you and I go way back, and I'm honored to be with you as well. And I'm extremely appreciative and honored by this award. And not just that, but I'm just very appreciative of our field, our cause, this calling. I just think this work is so incredibly important. And I just have so much gratitude for the founders of our field, for CASEL, for all the teachers that are doing this work in such a challenging time. And of course, I'm very appreciative of the award and the honor. So thank you.
Well, Keith, before we get into the details, I have a question that you may not have been expecting. So I know you as Keith, but a lot of people know you as Coach Rudy. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came to that title and what it means to social and emotional learning and how you understand the work?
Sure. So my real first name is Rudolph, and I'm named after my grandfather. And anyway, so as a young boy, my mom and dad felt like Rudolph was just a little too heavy of a name. So all my life, I've been known more by my middle name as Keith. But as I got into teaching and coaching, a lot of times students would have on their schedule my real first name of Rudolph. And so over time, I just started getting known as Coach Rudy. And because my grandfather, I want to honor him. And, I really, I'm proud of the work that I'm doing. And I think it does honor him. I very much embrace the Coach Rudy part. And even when I put my name on anything, it always says R. Keeth Matheny to kind of keep my grandfather's legacy in there.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, we're talking a lot about legacy today, right? And the legacy of folks like Mary Utne O'Brien, who really thought about this work and what it means today in 2021. And you and I, we actually have a little bit of a legacy together ourselves, right?
Sure, of course.
It's not 2 years, it's not 5 years, but I think it's been 7 years through Aspen commissions and working with the Urban Assembly that we've been in relationship to think about what it means to support high quality social and emotional learning. So the first thing I want to ask you about is the importance. Right, we're in 2021. We've got districts across the country who are focused on SEL. What is the importance of social and emotional learning implementation in schools today? And what do school districts need to do to meet that moment?
Boy, I just think this is such a critical time for SEL. I mean, when you look at the mental health wave that is following the pandemic, you've got that physical wave, then you've got the economic wave, and then you've got this huge mental health wave that is clearly following the pandemic. We've got lots of students that are struggling with mental health issues. I listened to Secretary Cardona talk just recently about how before the pandemic, the estimates were somewhere around 13 to 14% of students were struggling with anxiety and depression or depression. Mm-hmm. And now those numbers might be as high as 80% is what researchers are suggesting. So there's a lot going on. And, not to oversimplify it or to, kid around it, but we all know the commercial, you're not yourself when you're hungry. You got to get a Snickers, and the person's super angry and then they give them a Snickers and they're a normal person. We're not ourselves when we're dysregulated. When we're emotionally dysregulated, we're not ourselves. And that's for teachers and students. And right now, there's just so much going on. There's so much dysregulation. I think it's critically important. It's a critical moment for social emotional learning, especially around emotional awareness and emotional regulation, because we all need that. And on top of that, we've got, really a challenging time in our culture right now. It feels very divisive. And we've got so much of that happening that, we really need the ability and the skills to be able to disagree respectfully, to have a civil discourse, to collaborate effectively and solve problems. And, that again calls for these kinds of social and emotional skills. And then I think a third big thing that's making this call to action so important is the blooming rose of technology has major thorns in social and emotional skills and also in mental health challenges. And I think when you look at all those things together, it really is this, alarm. We've got to do something to better support not just students, but teachers and adults, and help grow these skills. And what SEL really is skill development. It's not teaching values. It's not fixing people. It's about empowering people with real skills that can impact everything in their lives, from, active listening to managing emotions, to resolving conflicts, to disagreeing respectfully, to bouncing back from setbacks. And, things like self-advocacy. These are really important skills that matter. And I think this is just such a critical time for this work. The need is intense. The potential is immense. And boy, it sure seems to be just getting intenser and immenser.
Man, well, look, Keith, I can certainly see why you were selected as an award recipient. Your passion, your clarity, your dedication to this really comes through, even across the virtual divide here. You talked about civic development, disagree without being disagreeable. You talked about mental health and trauma. And you talked about skills to help us empower our way through life. So I can really appreciate how you have thought about what this looks like in school districts across the country. But given all those kinds of things you talked about, civics and mental health, and what it means to just solve problems more generally, what's been your area of focus or priority with SEL implementation, and what have you learned?
Yeah, so I really have three big areas of focus. So my main niche, or niche, so to speak, is launching SEL programs. That's what I've been doing the most. I've actually worked with over 400 schools, and I'm very honored to have had those partners, Urban Assembly being some of them, and very much honored to work with you and your fabulous team, David. But one of the things that I think is really important in this work is you need an inspiring launch, a common vision to get people on the same page and excited about this work. And you also need a launch that really models effective SEL practice, that it shows what the pedagogy of it really looks like and the experience feels like. So that's a big part of my focus. And I've been very thrilled to work with schools all over the country. But a second big piece of my focus has been as a curriculum writer and author. So I'm a co-author of School Connect, which is a research and evidence-based program that's in over 2,000 secondary schools. And I love working with the School Connect team and helping develop lessons. And I'm often the person that makes the videos that actually interfaces with students. And so that's been a lot of fun. But really the heart of this work for me has been in the classroom. I've been a classroom teacher and had the great privilege of teaching this to students for over decades. 20 plus years of doing this work. And oh my gosh, my bucket is truly overflowing with stories and anecdotes from the kids that I've worked with and supported. And then now watching them, many of them graduating from college and reaching out. And I'm very excited that, this award is another opportunity. I have some of the students that are coming to an event to say hello and give me some congratulations. It's another chance to see my students. And CASEL actually did a webinar where some of my students got a chance to chat with me about this work that was featured this summer. So I'm very, very blessed through those relationships. And now through kind of the exponential relationships as I support teachers who then have connections with kids, and I get to meet some of those students as well. It's really very, very powerful and fulfilling work.
I mean, it's amazing, Keith. When you think about launch pads, it makes me think about Jeff Bezos launching into space, or what it means to really just leave our place and go off into a new frontier, right? And when we're talking about social emotional learning, we're talking about a frontier in which students are college, career, and community ready. And you watch students come back to you and say, "This mattered to me. This made a difference in my life."
Yeah, it's such a gift. I mean, I really believe, that what really makes life truly worth living is the difference you can make with others, the connections, the support. You can't take anything with you, but those relationships really matter, and making a difference, especially the ones that you care about, really matters. And I'm very, very blessed to have students that stay in touch, and I get to celebrate their success. And I have a bunch of students that are graduating this December that I'm going to go to their graduation in then May. And, it's really wonderful to have those kinds of long-term relationships. One of the teachers I worked with has a quote that I love, Laura Camlin. She says that when you teach SEL, you better love your students, because once you do this work, they're yours forever. And I love that.
That's amazing. I mean, and one of the things you and I have talked about, Keith, is we really focus a lot on the day-to-day, on the ground. What does this mean in real life? Now, no disrespect to some of our high-quality researchers who really launched this field.
Right.
You and I mean, you spend time in the classroom at the Urban Assembly. We have 23 schools supporting things district-wide. I think we have a special place here in our hearts for the practitioners.
Yeah, for sure. And really some deep insights into what this really looks like, where the rubber meets the road, where the pen meets the paper, where the teacher meets the student. And I think, some of the biggest things that we really need to be focusing on is skill development. Social emotional learning is skill development. And for skill development, it takes time. It takes practice. In order to develop a skill, you've got to sell it, you've got to teach it, you've got to practice it, and you've got to reinforce it. And what all of those things take is time and focus. And a lot of times I see schools and districts who are trying to find shortcuts, maybe we can just upload it into the system or just integrate it across everything. But I found that there is no elevator to success. There is no shortcut. We've all got to take the stairs. We've all got to get into the classroom and take the time to explicitly teach, using research and evidence-based methods, how to actively listen, how to collaborate effectively, and how to manage your emotions and resolve conflicts. And without that instruction, the skill development doesn't happen. And that's what really this work is about. And I think that's important, that we need to think about strong implementation and what kinds of models really support that sell it, teach it, practice it, reinforce it. And the reinforce it piece can be integration. You can integrate it all over campus, but without the explicit instruction, there's not the common language that we all need, students and adults, in order to reinforce in those teachable, or what I like to call reteachable moments.
Spoken like a true coach. Right? You got to teach the skills if you want students to be able to reproduce them, particularly under conditions of stress, right? So I imagine the number one thing to learn how to shoot free throws is to practice free throws. And I remember in basketball practice, if you missed, the whole team had to run, right? So the goal was to somewhat recreate some of those conditions so folks knew how to activate those skills when it was a little bit more stressful. So I really appreciate what you're talking about here.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. I like to say the time to build the shed is when it's not raining. It's kind of a Texas saying. I'll say it when it's not raining. My point is that, if I want kids to be able to manage their emotions in a crisis, then we need to first sell that it's important to learn to manage your emotions, then teach some strategies for first emotional awareness, so you know when to manage emotions, then strategies to manage emotions. And then we've got to do some practice. And that practice should be in calm situations regularly, where we're doing this routinely. We're learning to calm down. And then when they have that moment that they need it, now that's the time to reinforce it, give them that cue to remind them this is the time to use it, so that then they can transfer that skill and take it when they're struggling to get to sleep at night, or when their parents are fighting, or there's some crisis in the environment, or they have a big test or a big free throw to win the championship, like you just said.
No, that resonates with me so deeply, Keith. Having lost my keys on more than one occasion, the least important feedback is you should have put your keys somewhere you can find them in the moment, right? That is a great advice, and proactively in the future, I will put those keys in. But in the same way, telling kids to calm down in a crisis is not really something that I hear you say has been successful in helping them manage their emotions.
Oh yeah, I say that all the time. Never in the history of calm down did calm down anyone. If we're going to have kids learn to calm down, we got to practice it. And then in that moment, we can't yell, calm down. We've got to help co-regulate by listening, by relating, and co-regulating what's going on. And by doing that, we're actually helping them build a better emotional management brain for the future. We don't just learn these skills magically. It's not like, our prefrontal cortex doesn't finish developing until our mid-20s. Well, it's not like a prefrontal cortex fairy comes in our mid-20s and goes, hey, here's a prefrontal cortex. What happens is we learn through experience and through managing our emotions, neurons that fire together, wire together. And the more practice we get in becoming aware of what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and how we can manage it, the better and stronger the emotional brain is that we are building. And that's what we're trying to do, especially around this skill with students.
That's amazing. And again, Keith, I can certainly see why you've risen to the top of this opportunity to be recognized, because your clarity, your connection to the brains, as well as the connection to the implementers, can really help practitioners make sense of this opportunity that we have right now in 2021. And I want to think about this opportunity. We have great funding for SEL, right? And never in the history of SEL have folks been funded in the way that they're being funded. Education as a whole is being funded, and folks are looking to us and they're saying, what are we going to do? And so I want you to think about a generation from now, your kids, the next generation of SEL practice, our practitioners. And I want you to think about what they will say about you. What will they say about you in this time in 2021 that will inspire them to make sure that this work continues? So I'm gonna turn this over to you, Keith. Talk to our next generation. We have to tell them.
I think we really need to have, one, a sharpening of our field. Instead of SEL for this or SEL for that, we need just the field of social emotional learning for skill development that can be applied to all kinds of different outcomes and all kinds of different initiatives. I mean, these are things that we all need and can help students and schools and organizations be more successful. These are really just success skills. And I think the biggest thing I'd like to see is a true fifth core approach to social and emotional learning, that this becomes the fifth core, that I believe SEL is as core to student success as is any core subject. And it's got to be treated as such. It's got to have a dedicated space. It's got to have dedicated time. It's got to have, curriculum and training and a scope and a sequence and even evaluation and accountability. It's got to be a full system of what we know works in pedagogy, in best practice. And that has to be applied just like it would with math, science, English, or social studies, because this is a whole nother science. And I think too often we think that, every teacher can just teach this. Oh, we're going to give them an SEL class or an advisory class. Without the support, this is a whole nother science. And if I'm going to ask a math teacher to suddenly teach English, I would give them training. It's the same thing with emotional intelligence and social emotional learning. We can't just ask a teacher to just suddenly teach this without training and support. And so I really would like to see this really become a fifth core approach, because the potential is exponential on the time. I mean, that time investment pays off exponentially for kids. And it needs to be in the pre-service program. We need it to be part of teacher development programs. We need it to be part of, every year professional development. And it can't be something that struggles with initiative stamina. Too many things in our schools, they come and go and they don't have initiative stamina. We need initiative stamina with this. We need this to be something that it becomes a deeply rooted part of our systems that really helps kids grow these skills, and the payoff will be enormous. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned in my time in SEL is, even though I know how powerful it is, I am constantly astounded by the incredible success stories from students and from teachers and from schools of people that are really doing this work with fidelity. But that's the key. You got to do this work right. You've got to really spend the time. If you do something halfway, you're going to get halfway results. And that's not what we can do with social emotional learning.
I love that. We're talking about the fifth core. We're talking about an established part of our educational system, not a moment, but a movement, right? Not not about initiatives, but about how we think about what it means to be educated in our country. So Keeth Matheny, thank you so much. Your commitment to SEL is advancing our field and paving the way for others.
Thank you, David. Thank you, CASEL. Thank you to all of the educators out there doing this work. I know it's a challenging time, but kids need you. It's important, and thank you.
And speaking of those educators, we'll hope you're tuned into the rest of the conversations this week and share them with your community. On behalf of the Urban Assembly and CASEL, have a great day.